Chapter 2, April 6th. Dear Grandma, suddenly life feels like a movie running on fast forward. So much has happened since Sam and I ran home and told Mama about the oil spill. My heart was doing flip-flops when we told Mama. I knew the look on her face. She was so upset. She called the tribal council, and they're starting to make more calls. They say the oil is coming from a tank that burst at the site where they are removing the dam upstream. What's going to happen to all the animals that live in the river, like the salmon and the insects and the otters? And what about the eagle that I saw, and the other birds that just eat fish? They're going to be in trouble, aren't they? I wish I could just scoop up all the oil and take it away. Sam was trying to make me feel better. He said we'd probably discovered the oil spill before it could do too much harm. I'm not so sure. Chapter 3. The cleanup begins. Sam, I announced as he opened his front door, I can't stand just hanging around not doing anything. I'm going to the river. Do you want to come with me? Sam paused. I don't know, Taya. I mean, what if we're in the way? At least we have to see if we can help, I said. Think about the birds and the trees and the plants by the river and the young salmon, the salmon fry. If they don't make it downstream because of the oil in the water, they don't grow into adult salmon. You're right, Sam said. Let's go. Everything looked so different, I said as we approached the river bank. The other day it had been so quiet. I could hear the babble of the water rushing over the rocks and the shriek of the eagle. Now that peaceful spot was a chattering center of activity. All I could hear were voices, worried voices. Groups of people were scattered along the edge of the river, huddled in clusters, just like the plants that sprouted along the riverbank. Our tribal council was there, and some concerned elders, and the tribe's river restoration team. There were lots more people that I didn't recognize. Everyone looks kind of official, Sam said. I'm sure they can use help though, right? I asked, suddenly less certain that I had been at home. Oh, I said, there's Thomas. See him? Of course he's here. Come on. If anyone could help clean up this mess, it was my neighbor Thomas. He's an environmental engineer. He'd graduated college last year and returned home to the reservation. He'd once explained to me that in his work, he uses math, science, and creativity to help solve problems in the environment. Now I waved to him, and he waved back at Sam and me. He held a map of the Elwha River, which snaked across the page in blue. There were red circles and X's drawn on the map. Hi, Thomas, I said. We want to help. Is there something that we can do? Hi, Taya. Hi, Sam, Thomas said. It's great that you came. Lots of volunteers have gathered to help. We're beginning to put together our plan of action. What's the plan? Sam asked. Good question. We still need to work out the specific process for this cleanup, Thomas explained. We need to use a special technology to clean up the oil. Like a laser or something? I asked. Thomas smiled. Not quite, he said. A technology is anything designed to solve a problem.
She will be looking for you.
In this case, the technology for cleaning up the oil is a process, a series of steps to help us remove as much oil as possible. One of the most important things to do when there's been an oil spill is to contain it, so that the oil can't spread and pollute more areas. Then we need to start removing the oil. Do you use big shovels to get it out? I asked. Sometimes we do use shovels or scoops to remove the oil, Thomas said. Sometimes we use different materials to absorb the oil. Other times we use special chemicals to disperse the oil, to break it up. We have to think carefully about the best way to protect the ecosystem when the oil has been spilled. We learned about ecosystems in school, Sam said. Every area has its own ecosystem, its own community of animals, plants, fungi, and bacteria. And the environment that they live in is part of the ecosystem too, I added. That's right, Thomas said. We have to be careful not to cause any more harm to the ecosystem. How could we cause more harm than spilling oil? Sam asked. You're right. The main problem is that the oil was spilled in the first place, Thomas said. But now that it's there, we don't want to move it to make it any worse. So, for example, if we accidentally push the oil around, we might end up moving it into areas that were clean, and that wouldn't be good. My mind flashed to the flecks of oil dancing on the water. The oil had seemed to stretch as far as I could see it. How do you contain the oil when there's so much of it? I asked. Booms can help, Thomas said. Booms, Sam said. Like with explosions? It's a different kind of boom, Thomas explained. These booms are sort of like floating fences that help us corral the oil. Containing it can be tough, especially if there are strong currents in the water. Currents in the water, I thought? Like here? I asked, pointing to a section of the river on the map. I noticed the other day when I was taking pictures that the currents are very strong here. It's almost like a whirlpool, Sam said, nodding. Here, I'll show you, I said, and I pulled my journal out of my backpack and flipped to the pictures that I had taken in that area. See, the water is choppy here, I said, pointing to the photo. It's because some beavers are building a dam nearby. It's changing the way the river flows. That's good to know, Thomas said. He took a red pen out of his pocket and circled the area. I remembered some things about the river from when I was a kid, but lots of things have changed in just the few years I've been away. Do you have pictures of other parts of the river? Thomas asked. Oh, sure, I said. I take pictures of the trees, the water, the animals I see, all sorts of things, I said. We come down to the river almost every day in the summer, Sam confirmed. This is great, Thomas said. Your pictures and everything you know about the river could be very helpful to us. Thomas said, Really? I asked, How? We need to decide how to use the resources we have and which areas of the river should be cleaned first, Thomas explained. To do that, we have to ask good questions about the area. It's all part of the process, the engineering design process. What's that? Sam asked. Well, it's a way of thinking that helps engineers solve problems, Thomas explained. The first step is asking good questions. What kind of questions? I asked. Questions about what worked well to clean up another oil spill and what didn't work as well, Thomas explained. Questions about the local ecosystem and how that ecosystem might be affected. So how do you get the answers? Sam asked. Well, sometimes you might not get all the answers at first, Thomas said. Doing research, observing the ecosystem, and talking to local experts like you and Taya can help too. Well, what do you do next? I asked. The next step is to imagine some ways to solve the problem and then plan out what to do, Thomas explained. When you put your plan into action, you test and evaluate as you go. Then you make improvements based on what you see. We have to go through all those steps before the river is cleaned up, Sam asked. We have to go through all these steps, and probably more, Thomas sighed. We often have to try a few different things before the cleanup is successful. That's the improve step I talked about. We're already working on containing the oil and beginning to remove it, but it will be a long process.